has not kicked off properly yet. Shilian did a great job on the emoji project, where we created a set of 10 emojis that were customized for Ren. And I see West is coming back here. And yeah, so basically that was the first test. Marketing group was given, went great, and we're gonna have a call this Thursday probably. So it would be great to see as many of you as possible there to kind of kick that off as well and see how we as a community can push the marketing forward. And if anyone wants to, there is a channel that's not public to everyone, just to keep the conversation focused on marketing and not deviate too much. But of course, it's nothing secret about it. So anyone who wants to join, just let us know and we add you to it, just to keep things a bit more organized. And I'm not sure, is Wes in yet? I don't know how.
Yeah, Wes is in already. Hi, Wes.
Yeah, hey guys.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. I'll let you take over. I just gave a short brief on the small and DAO groups that have already been shaped. And
Okay, great. So I guess we'll pivot from what we've been doing as to stuff more forward-looking. I didn't really have too solid of an agenda for today, but does any community members have any topics that they feel strongly about or want to just want to talk about in general? If not, then we can kind of just continue talking about these little subgroups that are slowly being formed by the community, which is great to see. It's nice to see that the people are getting involved. It's also great to see that we're having a solid amount of attendance for our first meeting, which kind of shows that you guys are in it for the long haul and you care a lot. So I definitely I'd lend out a hand to just to reach out if you want to help out with marketing, with writing, with anything, taking notes at meetings. Reach out. There's plenty of room for everyone to help out, and it'd be greatly appreciated.
Sorry to jump in there, Wes. I have a quick question for everyone in here, since the topic Treasury Working Group came up earlier. How does the community feel about creating a Treasury group that will be basically dedicated to the SEF and, trying to get the finances in order and all that? Because the yield ops group is mostly focused on just yield optimization. No one?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The part that is confusing for me is like, what would the main responsibilities be? Because at the moment, the community ecosystem fund isn't that big, and we don't have that many proposals to do something with it, such as marketing efforts or widgets, apps, whatever to be created for Ren. One thing that I would like to see, that I think would definitely boost Ren in general, would be a group that goes out there and tries to get developers to build whatever on Ren. It could be like simple widgets for the command center. It could be something, I don't know actually, but anything out there just to get the ball moving when it comes to developers interacting with Ren. I personally see that as something a bit more urgent than creating a treasury board, but not sure how the group feels here.
I'm kind of with you, Sabobi, on the urgency level. I think what I guess then it would be to create some like bounties for that. I think that might be a good nudge to developers as well, saying to whatever $1,000 for whatever some widget or just something to show the power of Ren, or like, yeah, like you were saying, for integrations, $1,000 for uh, using Ren v3 or what have you, whatever the latest tech stack is. As far as going out and reaching those developers, I'm in like a few working ones where kind of people would post their, it's like a job board essentially. So I could definitely see if we can start posting our kind of bounties there. Does anyone else from the community know of kind of job boards or like bounty boards around crypto and Web3?
I kind of want to jump in and say that it's my personal opinion that before we start placing bounties on future activities, we should consider showing gratitude or signs of appreciation towards the stuff that's already been done for free. For example, um, Run Digest, for example, Comfy bot, that's awesome. Ran a large asset bot on Telegram and Twitter, stuff like that. That's been going for a while now and has been done for free.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
sure. That would definitely, that can definitely be a part of it. Um, because yeah, I think those people who have done it for free are perhaps more long-term aligned because they weren't expecting money to begin with. So I think that might. I agree with you, Arvi. It's a great point.
Okay, thanks. Another thought was that is relevant is that I think we should not try to create artificial, or perhaps you can call them not very needed bounties or activities, and focus on the stuff that we either really need and don't have, or that we have and we want to improve further. For example, the same thing, digest, that can, for example, maybe transform into a podcast for in the future, just just as an idea, or ComfyBot that can transform from a Telegram bot towards dark node command center widget. Uh, I think Constantine has mentioned that it is a possibility that in future our dark node command center will have widgets that you will be able to plug in and to be displayed there. So basically, the way we approach the future activities and sponsoring them is to be focused on the stuff that we really need, and not just some fun stuff, like use a rent bridge or whatever. Yeah, that's it.
I'd like to suggest an app which I think could be very useful in terms of driving volume, and it's not DeFi related, and it would be an enormous challenge for what it's worth. But I think breaking it out would give us a lot of potential bounties that could be useful not just for this app, but for potentially other rent apps as well. The suggestion would be a no limit Texas Hold'em DeFi app.
That sounds interesting. How would that work?
Well, it'd be complicated. You need to have need to be legal, meaning you'd have to validate the users who are using the app. You'd need RNG, which I believe Ren can do. You'd need the secret knowledge, which I'm not sure Ren can do. and you need a very, very fast transaction speed, which it seems like Ren should be able to do if it's based off the Avalanche subnet.
Wouldn't it, like when you said you need to verify users, why is that? Wouldn't it be cooler with something that you don't need KYC or anything for?
Well, I don't think gambling is legal for people under 21, at least in most U.S. states. Also, you'd want to make sure that you don't have people abusing the system by making multiple accounts and playing. Basically, there's only one. You're playing against 7 other people, but they're all the same person. That person's going to have an advantage. So I think that's something that could also be useful for a lot of Ren apps, for what it's worth.
It's an interesting idea. I like it.
Thanks for listening. That's a suggestion. I think it'd take a while to get there, but just wanted to throw it out there. So appreciate the time, and also appreciate all the work that the community has done and continues to do. I think you guys are awesome.
Okay. Well, I think that was a solid idea as well. We'll have to discuss that further and see if that could be pursued. As far as next steps on the agenda, is there? I kind of reached out earlier. Does anyone have any pertinent questions or comments on how things are doing, and any ways that they would like to see stuff improved?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a noisy spot. I guess I'd like to see more discussion on governance and structuring the Ren DAO. Like we were opened up this meeting talking about the groups that have been created, but I think a larger ongoing discussion about how to scale governance with Ren DAO, like how we best communicate with each other, how we best organize ideas, and to get them on stack to move them forward, or to even categorize them as things that is not in the scope of Ren DAO. I don't know. I just think that it's a big discussion that can have a big impact, and it's I don't know. I think that so far what I've seen with Ren DAO is it's a lot of it's already running more smoothly than a lot of DAOs I've seen, and I think that's really great. And I think if we're going to be a really a serious force, then we're going to have to get organized. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say about that right now.
Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely I thank you for your time and your comments. I agree. I think we're definitely doing probably in the leading pack as far as DAOs go. But like you did say, it is a little disorganized, and I think some of that stems from mostly kind of just volunteers and community members trying to step up around their free time. But if we're always onboarding new people, and like you're welcome to come show up and like help us if you're good in kind of organizing and like structuring organizations or DAOs, or you've seen other good examples. Just throw it in the chats, and we'll look at it and then build from there on being organized. Great input, Cowboy. I believe was your name. Anything from anyone else here?
I have 2 questions. I will start with the smaller one. In general, with what you guys have seen from the first edition of Ren Digest, what would you like to see more, and what would you like to see differently? Does that make sense? Anything that would, help us make it a bit more tailored to what the community wants to see. Anything that comes to mind at the moment? Like any ideas on how to engage the community?
I think one of the most difficult issues that you've probably got with the Ren's Digest, Bobby, is that obviously you want to include all the tech updates and everything that's happening in the project. But then I think the readers, the Ren's Digest, I forgot what it's called now, it probably reads a bit more like a Ren monthly tech update from the team, because obviously you want to include all the things that's happening as well with the project. I suppose just one of the ideas that I have off the top of my head would be to, I was thinking maybe we could just take some snapshots, or I could just take some snapshots or screenshots of some of the most discussed things that we've had in the community for that week. So on Discord, for example, so where Max was confirming a lot of things recently about the Grey Corps and Alameda, I could just take screenshots of things like that. If you wanted to include some of the most popular discussions in the Discord or the Telegram into that Reader's Digest, then people reading that would just see what some of the key points, what some of the key talking points were in the Discord, for example. Just sort of like, bites of communication between the members of the community.
I mean, that's a great idea. We were already discussing to kind of put in summaries of what's been discussed in the forum.
Yeah.
Especially the latest one that's been up on Ren 2.0.
Yeah.
And I like the idea to include Discord conversations as well, because sometimes people go off on a tangent that turns out to be quite interesting. And it would be cool to have snippets of that, especially when I know everyone gets attentive when Chico Bermuda types something. So for those who missed that, we can have like a favorite section for that.
Yeah, even if you were just to call it, community highlights or something like that, I think it would be good for people that aren't necessarily in the Ren Discord just to see, sort of some of the conversations that we have in the community. And obviously Max had a really good conversation with Prayeeth yesterday or the day before about Alameda and everything else. So I think, maybe just snippets from the community or the community's thoughts in that newsletter would probably make it a bit more, I think, tailored more towards the community, as opposed to just, talking about the project updates. That was just one idea I had. But also, Sabawi, you mentioned earlier about if anybody wants to contribute to the newsletter, because I think there's only 2 or 3 of you working on it so far. I'm happy to help out with that as well. So I'm happy to nominate myself to help out with that anytime. And also with the marketing as well. You're going to have a call on Thursday, I think, this week with the marketing side of things. So I'll take part in that as well while we're talking about the newsletter and everything else.
That's awesome.
Great. Well,
Thanks,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Say no more. I'll be excited to see you around. Thanks, Philium.
Yeah, no problem. I don't really have a massive amount to contribute to today's call. I think, like everybody else, I'm just waiting for, I'm just getting geared up for the Renbridge 3 to come out host to host. And obviously, I'm very excited for Catalog. So I've just got some content ready to support the Renbridge 3. Just waiting to use that. I know most of you have already seen, but for those of you that haven't seen already, I've started working on a comparison graphic just to compare Catalog to all the other, the mainstream dexes. The goal of that really is to just, compare Catalog with all the other dexes on a pound-for-pound basis and just say, look, this is why Catalog is superior to all the other dex options. And for those of you that haven't seen it, it's in the brainstorming channel on Catalog. And we're just sort of getting that wrapped up now. And the idea behind that is to just support the Catalog team. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. And yeah, that's it really. I'm just waiting for Renbridge like everybody else. So I think we're just in a quiet time at the minute in the community. Everybody's just been very patient, and we're just waiting for the big updates to come out. So, but I'm definitely on board with the Treasury group as well. I think that's a very good idea. And So Bobby, you mentioned earlier, you mentioned previously about the idea of incentivizing and rewarding community members for some of the little tasks that they do, like, you know, the Ren bot and the Ren digest and all that sort of thing. I think it would probably be a good idea if we could set up some sort of tipping system for the community where, you know, the Ren community can just agree to tip certain people for all these tasks that they do, and then hopefully that would incentivize new people in the community to want to do constructive things for Ren. And maybe that's something that the new Treasury group could manage as well. You know, how do we, the community wanted to tip users for all these little things that they do, you know, all the little ways that they contribute to the project. How could we, you know, just tip them with some Ren or tip them with a bit of Bitcoin or something from the ecosystem fund? Is that something that people would like as an idea, or?
I think that's a really good idea, to be honest. I've seen it used well in the Synthetics Discord. So,
Yeah, even if it's
how you
just,
set it up.
yeah. You know,
Yeah,
I suppose the community could decide the technicalities, you know, if they just wanted to $50 tip. So if somebody was to build like a new bot now that was just as good as the Comfy bot, I think, you know, it would be nice if we could just have a vote every month to say, look, who deserves to be tipped this month, and that user that's done that task that stands out in the community, they could have the, you know, $100 Ren or $50 Ren just as a Ren tip, that sort of thing. But just have a system to incentivize people doing activities for the community, really. And I think that would sort of tie in well with the DAO as well. You know, we're rewarding users and we're giving something back to the community.
Great idea.
I know RV probably supports it because I think RV mentioned it. I think RV was the first person to bring it up, but I think it's a pretty good idea if you know, everybody else likes the idea.
I think it's a good idea, but I guess you'll just need to get funds moved to an account that we're able to do it with, and somebody who can set it up in Discord or however we'd want to do it.
Yeah. I think, Sababi, you were mentioning at the very start about having a new treasury group. I think it was either you or Wes that was talking about having a new treasury group as part of the DAO, because we just have the yield ups group. I think it was you, Sababi, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the community to basically just create the treasury group. I don't think there's anything stopping us. And then from there, either, I think Max, correct me if I'm wrong here, it would make sense that the yield ops group would allocate part of the SEF to the treasury group, or I'm not sure how that would work actually. If there would be a new set of multi-sig signers set up, maybe that would be a topic for later once the treasury group has been formed properly. But it doesn't need to be like completely thought out or anything. People can just start a treasury group and then, you know, put up an RFC, and then after that RFP, vote for it and get it going. For us who are already contributing through these various groups like the Yield Ops Comms group and whatnot, it feels a little bit weird to go out there and ask like we should be rewarded for this and that, since we're obviously doing it out of, you know, our own interest and enthusiasm. But I do like the idea. I mean, it would definitely. I do think that other people would be encouraged to, you know, chip in here and there, even if it's like a small task. And
I think
it would be nice.
Sorry, Sababi.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say that I think it would be a good idea if we did decide to implement a treasury group. That could be the very first task. You know, we could say, okay, we've got a treasury group, we've got some members together. Just, you know, not trying to learn to run before we can walk. We could just set up the treasury group and say, you know, the very first task that we could have would be to just, you know, build a tipping system. That could be the very first task for the new treasury group, and then, you know, we could sort of build on top of that and then just get the ball rolling from there, I think.
Yeah, I like it. How about getting up an RFC just to gauge the interest there and see how many actually are willing to join the treasury group? Because one thing we noticed, I mean, this is definitely not to put any blame. One thing that we noticed in the past was that a lot of people are interested in different groups, but then once the group is shaped, it turns out to be just one, two of us. So maybe just put up a RFC how many are actually interested to participate, and then I don't see any issues with forming. Should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can put an RFC together if everybody wants to entertain the idea. I've got no problem with that.
I vote yay for sure.
Yes, for me as well.
Another question I had for the community was the post that came up. When was it? It was like a week or two ago. From Renfield about let me see if I can find it here. For the basically buyback or for the treasury to be used by Ren tokens, and there was a quite extensive response from Prey and a few others. I'm not sure, Prey, if you would like to just give a short brief on your response or not, but it was an interesting conversation overall, if it should happen or not, and how the community feels about the treasury money being used to buy the Ren token. Now would be a good opportunity for everyone to have like an open floor to discuss it rather than going and finding it in the Discord channel. Does anyone have any strong opinions about it? Any ideas?
I already gave my support for it in the Discord chat. I think it makes sense for us to have, some of our own tokens in the CEF or the Treasury. So yeah, I'm absolutely fine with it. Yeah.
I would second that. I also mentioned that in the Discord channel. But I think, if Ren appreciates the way that we hope it will, that will greatly amplify our ability to fund initiatives to help Ren.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
I personally don't have any strong opinions about it. I'm pretty indifferent, to be honest. One thing that comes to mind is when reading Medium articles, posts from people like, let's say, Hasso and stuff in the DeFi space, when they talk about projects not having their own native token in their treasury and trying to keep it as much as possible in external assets such as stables or VC or whatnot. That would be the only thing that comes to my mind regarding should we really do this or not. But like I said, I also don't really have a strong opinion about it, so I would mostly just talk about it to kick off a discussion. I'm pretty indifferent.
Yeah, but since my name was mentioned just briefly, I think it's a great idea. I think you should do it. And I think Hasu, where he was coming from, these are projects who predominantly have their own native token. In many cases, it hasn't really even been issued per se. So it's a very different situation from Ren, where you would need to go out onto the open market and purchase it. And I think it's completely healthy. I don't see any issue, and in fact, I think it's kind of a little strange, really, that we don't have our own token to some degree in the treasury. And as someone mentioned earlier, it's a great way to reward people. So I think it's just about setting it maybe a reasonable percentage, a reasonable amount, and doing it. So yeah, I think it's a very good idea. I would recommend doing it.
Thanks, Bray. And I also agree. I think it's more for the ones who just predominantly have their own token, especially through their launches, where they basically pre-mine amount of tokens or a certain percentage of the emissions going towards the treasury in the own native token that doesn't really do much when it's a significant amount. That can also burden the project itself. But I do agree with you that it can come in handy and also make sense for the project to, in general, custody a certain amount. The only thing that I would personally like to avoid is for it to become kind of like a trading group. And, we feel kind of excited about price going up after we do the purchase. And some people, get. I mean, it could be very reasonable as well to sell the tokens in the future as well, as long as there's a sound logic behind it, and it doesn't just become let's buy a token, so let's sell a token, so whatnot. That would be my only comment, but I definitely don't have anything against it. And I think the first step would be to set up an RFC just to get the conversation going. Me personally, I would kind of like avoid, since I'm already in the yield ops group, and it would kind of be weird to put up a proposal on how to spend the money that I'm part of the multi-sig on.
Along these lines, I don't know if it'd be somewhere in between these two, the treasury group and the yield group. But I mean, what do we think about? Is it a bad idea for us to support liquidity in certain places? Like, I don't know. Just for example, like something like Loopring, their Ren is tradable on there, but like it has zero liquidity basically, and it could be strategic thinking about these different places that have like cheap on ramps, as where people can be introduced to Ren through that, or like I don't know. I just think that we could strategically add liquidity in different places, and also buy Ren tokens that way. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be a proposal for the treasury group. So once the treasury group's set up and we're thinking about incentivizing users with tips, that cowboy could be another good example of how you think the funds should be spent, or that could be something that you could directly propose to the treasury community, and then everyone else could just have a vote on that, whether they agree with the proposal. But I think as long as we've got the ideas coming in, we can just organize them later. But yeah, that sounds like something we could definitely do with the new treasury group.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is like creating partnerships. And I mean, earlier someone was talking about like a poker app or something like that, which I think would be, I think that's like kind of outside the scope of the DAO. But what isn't is, I don't know, becoming partners with other DeFi Legos, which can make these sorts of things happen. So, if we see that in connecting with apps that would require some sort of Sybil resistance, making relationships with projects that are working on Sybil resistance as a way to help developers create projects around, these sort of synergistic relationships.
Could some of these DeFi Legos be Ren subnets? And maybe this is outside the scope of DAO, so please let me know if it is the case.
I mean, as far as outside the scope of the DAO, like maybe, but that use case definitely could fit. So it's definitely not outside the scope of a potential use case. And I think ultimately the best use cases have generate the most income for these dark nodes. And if this poker app gets mainstream, right, on the App Store, getting millions of downloads, that's definitely gonna be a decent revenue source, I would imagine, with mints and burns. But as far as pursuing that idea, I'm not really sure on how to proceed with that. Like you said, it'd be a pretty big task for developers, and then I would assume we would have them funded, which I don't think the Treasury could afford right now. But yeah, I'm a fan of the idea. Just not sure on the execution part. But okay, so what 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 are some other topics the community would like to discuss? If there's nothing on anyone's mind, I think it might be good to adjourn the meeting. I will say I'm excited for this. Yeah, I'm excited for this project. I'm glad that we have such a large group of people active and showing up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to working with all of you because I'm assuming you guys are here because for the project, So I'll be excited to work with everyone.
Yeah,
Before we
too, Liz.
end, I can throw out just a couple of things. I mean, we will release a proposal on funding and incentivization soon. We will release a proposal on decentralization. And Rambish 3 is coming out probably this week. Just so you guys are aware, there's everything is taken care of. But the important thing right now is also to think about the subnet thing. It will tie into sort of funding for the Ren DAO. It will tie into decentralization, but we can still consider whether you think it's fruitful to pursue allowing dApps to be deployed on Ren, because the team personally thinks that makes a lot of sense. Even if we have a protocol that works, we could decentralize it, etc., and all that. To get more volume, we think that we can attract more developers by having this feature where they can get the whole package, they can deploy on Ren. It will take care of their multi-chain needs. They can, customize or just choose an already deployed subnet, whatever they want. And by being in the Ren ecosystem, I mean, it will be easier for them to use multi-chain assets natively, which dark node operators benefit from, of course. So we see this as yeah, we can go with Ren just like it is now, but we have to look forward into the future and consider how can we get more volume, more development applications into the Ren ecosystem. Because it can be hard if a project building some kind of DeFi Lego, they deploy on some chain or some layer 2, like Arbitrum, Optimism, whatever. They're doing it because they want a platform that's, scalable, etc. It's connected up to a bunch of other DeFi stuff. But they might not sort of have a specific preference for which layer 2 or platform in the beginning. So if we can get developers already at that stage, then we're sort of one step ahead. Because if they deploy an Optimism, then they will be focused on Optimism things, and they might not be as interested in integrating Ren in the beginning, at least, because they're all focused about getting an ecosystem up on Optimism. But if we can get them at that stage when they're designing their whole application protocol and all of that, if we can get them there to deploy on Ren, then we got an integrator done, completed. They will use Ren, they will bridge Bitcoin, etc. That's why we like the Ren team likes it, and because if we let people deploy on Ren, we can think of other ways to make Ren Ren would be a utility token. It can be a gas asset for subnets, etc. There's so many more possibilities. It doesn't just have to be a bonding token, so we can get more, more demand for Ren as an asset by allowing applications to deploy on Ren. So we think it's important for the community to consider this proposal. Why it's subnets and not like rollups, etc. Subnets is just a general term. It could be any kind of setup. It could be like a subnet could be a rollup. So it's not like we're just trying to copy. It's not a copy of Avalanche and how their subnets work. Really, just think of subnets as a general programming environment that can take almost any kind of shape. It will have some kind of plugins that lets it talk to the Ren core layer that does the MPC and the key management, the sharding and all of that. But the subnet can then be like any kind of setup, basically. I mean, at least now, we haven't decided any limitations on what a subnet should be. Maybe the community wants there to be some kind of limitations, then let's do that. But for now, you can just consider it an open design space where we could allow any kind of subnet, any kind of programming environment. And so please consider this proposal and read through the thread. There's 100 messages in that thread at the moment. If you have more questions, post them in there. I'll try to answer them or get Sustrup to answer it. We don't have to we're still doing and focusing almost above subnets at the moment. We're focusing more on decentralization, but this is something that still has to happen in parallel, and we want to do both. So I mean, a lot of the questions are about decentralization in the subnet proposals. Please consider the subnet proposal on its own, just if we can, so we can clear out some questions and confusions, and so the team knows what the community thinks about just the general application layer for Ren.
Hey, Max, can I have a quick question on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because based on what you just said, is it then the target market you view more as kind of up-and-coming projects, ones that haven't yet been established and are just building now, and perhaps can be motivated to build right from the start in a multi-chain environment? Is that the target, kind of your typical target count that you'll be going after?
It doesn't have to be, because if we have an EVM, if we also make an EVM subnet, which is like what would give us the most value initially, we can go out and ask projects to also copy their protocol, deploy it on the Ren EVM, and suddenly they have access to all of these assets in a cheap, easy way. They can do multi-chain support. So we would do both of that, and the DAO should also reach out to other projects, ask them to deploy subnets, but we would also look at new teams, and whatever Ren Labs is cooking up would be probably on a subnet or something like that. We would try to get new developers to look for Ren and sort of incentivize developers to deploy new projects and developers to deploy on Ren. I mean, we get the whole package in that way that we think is more attractive than, say, just deploy on this chain because it's easy. I mean, if we can provide incentives just like other layer ones, then we're more attractive because we're natively multi-chain as well. So that's where we can have an edge that's nowhere in the market at the moment. Sure, there are EVM bridges, but they don't compare, and they get hacked so much more than us. I think we will prove ourselves more over time as the safe and long-term sort of play as well, which also makes sense in a bear market to consider. So it can be
And
both.
just quickly, okay, gotcha. And a very, I'm sorry, but just a very quick follow-up, because Ren has such a good name, right? I believe in
DeFi across the wider crypto space. It's been a proven project for some time. And my guess is you can get an audience quite quickly with Curve and Uniswap and Aave and some of these other major players now who I believe are going to be quite even more dominant in the future. I might be wrong, but we'll see. Have you had any discussions with them about this vision? And if so, kind of what has their feedback been? And if not, is that something that maybe you could consider doing soon? I think it would probably help a lot, the discussions, getting some real feedback from potential users who we probably assume are going to be major players. They already are, but will continue to be moving forward. And if they express some interest, that could be quite convincing, I would guess, to a lot of people. But if they say, no, this is completely not the model we want to build on, or we're going in this other direction or whatever, then obviously that would be another data point we should consider. So just curious if any of those discussions have happened so far. What do we know about that to date?
So because this is a really pretty new development, we haven't gone out and asked too many yet, because it's these plans and designs are changing, day to day, week to week, on how we think it would look like. When we've asked previously, some like Curve and expressed interest, but it was always like, okay, how would it work? And we didn't know yet at that time. So we don't want to ask until we know for sure how it would look like, because otherwise you're just annoying them, saying you should deploy in us, but then we don't say how you're gonna do it. It's just like an empty proposition. So we will be doing that more soon when we start finalizing how it will look like, and it ties into the catalog launch as well. So catalog is helping us a lot in this process of figuring out how to do this Ren deployment. So this will be an ongoing process very soon, that we will be able to get feedback from other projects, and we will get feedback sort of from catalog itself. And so when that starts happening, it makes sense for the community to also go out into crypto Twitter and forums and all of that, and talk to people and let people know. So the catalog will be the first example that you could point to say how easy it is. Because before then, it's like there's nothing to show, so it's difficult to market it. But we will have material so you can market soon. And that's the plan, sort of. Even if we don't have the feedback from them yet, we can still imagine it will be a very attractive proposition, and we can always target newer developers as well, and we can help people deploy. We can fork and make there's a lot of opportunities for this.
Thank you.
I think that's a great point, to be honest, because I guess going back a while now, it was Compound that tried to create their own chain, didn't they? And then said it was basically too difficult to be able to do. So surely reaching out to the likes of Compound, who want to be on every chain, and we're looking at building their own one, which is effectively the subnet. It's essentially its own chain by itself. So yeah, I think it's a really good point.
I mean, it won't take either way. It won't take away from the Ren sort of core utility. As the other, I mean, the roadmap for the vanilla Ren is still, decentralizing, so we can get more trust in the ecosystem, and we have that sort of started that up. We'll have a proposal that we think is interesting to the community that will sort of leapfrog possibly the Grey Core in a good way. But until we've established all the final details, we won't post it yet. So that's still going to happen. the subnet thing won't delay those things, as well as so with FriendBridge 3 out as well, we'll have support for host-to-host tokens, so we can start adding more tokens, integrating more chains. All of that can still happen. Because if we wanted to build out this application layer on Ren, we still would need to hire more or get another team to work on this, because it is it requires more resources to do this. So we would actually probably get more team members or get another team to do it. So it's not like this thing would delay all the things we're still working on.
I have one quick question. How would this subnets play out with Ren.js?
So what do you mean? Ren.js would still work for all the other host chains that Ren is deployed on. For subnets, they would have probably something. Maybe they could use Ren.js as well, but maybe we'd have something more simpler. It would be more. We would deploy some kind of plugins that would offer all that functionality directly at the sort of subnet protocol layer, so they wouldn't just have to focus on front end. It wouldn't just be like a front end integration. It would be like a chain thing. So it would be probably easier for them to directly mint, bridge, or release assets cross chain. Is there what do you mean? Otherwise, by Ren.js, how it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm technical enough to know the details, but I was just thinking, how could a subnet outcompete Ren.js, if that makes sense? Like, to the degree where it's actually, let's say you have an EVM subnet, and then it's easier to deploy there than integrating through Ren.js.
But for any application that's on host chain, so like any application protocol that's on Ethereum or Phantom or Solana, whatever, they can use Ren.js if they want to integrate Ren. So I don't see how a subnet, an application on Ethereum wouldn't integrate the subnet. They could cross chain with the subnet through Ren.js. So it's still I don't see. Yeah. Any other questions on subnets things?
Yes, just sorry,
go ahead.
When you go. Yeah, I guess just you touched on Greycore there again, and I guess there's a question asked about the original Greycore members and whether they are still part of it or have they been changing with the rollout of the decentralization.
So, in the proposal that we will post soonish, after a couple of things that have been posted beforehand, we're thinking of a way that doesn't require the Greycore at all. So, I mean, even if we're very thankful for them, we wouldn't have to bug them. We could deploy a decentralized Ren protocol that's not reliant on any federated network or federated set of members. They could still deploy nodes on this network, but so would also anyone else. So it's less dependent on partners to work. We believe it would be more reliable, more secure, censorship resistant, because one thing that we've been sort of worried about, that even if we had, let's say we launched a Greycore as the original plan, it would be censorship. There would be risk that it could get censored because there are hackers, etc., that might be using Ren as filter bridge, even if everything is open, and regulators, etc., they're looking more and more into crypto. We're seeing projects getting sanctioned. It's a bit risky to have a federated network. So we're thinking of something that's, we've done a lot of work in the background on stuff that makes Ren protocol more safe than what we have deployed. And we want to deploy those updates in a decentralized Ren network. We will have that all explained in the proposal. Community has to, governance has to, go through it, discuss it. Should we do it somewhat differently? But we think it's better than relying on a federated network. So it will be explained.
No, it's good to hear. That's, thanks, Max.
Thank you, Max, for sharing that update. I think that for most of the names I'm seeing this call, I in general think the discussion from the community is healthy, and people have different strong emotions on different points, and I think that's good in centralized organizations and decentralized organizations. But providing the context that you did, I think that's very helpful to kind of not lose track of, hey, Ren can do both, right? We can have a serious and engaging conversation on the subnet models or kind of just deploying dApps, right? And call it what you want to call that. And also that the process to decentralize it. I am personally excited just in general for all the ongoing conversations. I think Sabobi's take on what he wrote I think it was a week ago or so, where he said, I don't know if I should share it, but I will anyways. And it was about skipping gray core and whatnot. Hearing your points today, I mean, that just sounds, it sounds reasonable. It makes sense, and obviously it's a conversation where we all benefit from having very thoughtful, very good conversations. So, just in general, thank you for making time for sharing this. And I can only speak on my behalf. I understand that you can't disclose specific things, and it makes sense. There's a lot of risk, and also there's business secrecy as usual, and this is sort of we're at the forefront of that, right? DeFi, what that means, what it feels like. And I just also wanted to thank all the members in this community call for making the time to be here. I mean, I think the best information is the one we hear directly from source, right? And in this particular case, it's you. So thank you for everybody being here, and thank you, Max, for sharing what you can. This really helps a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Max.
Yeah, and I mean, we will post a bunch of stuff. I mean, I've been writing RFCs day and night, and we've been reworking stuff, and we have at least 3 RFCs we're gonna post soon. It's not that we're being secret anymore. It's just taking time to write it all out and process it internally in the team. And then we want to see what the community thinks. So we have to also space these out a bit, so the community can process something at once, because we have too much to share at once. So we will be releasing things that we probably should have community calls about, and open big discussions, because a lot has been in development that's about to or could be released soon, and we're very excited about it, regardless of the market environment and macro stuff, because we're in it for the long haul. We're very fortunate to have you guys, the community that we have, that's sticking it all out and being here and helping and contributing. And I really hope that people will be engaging more in the DAO and sort of trying to get working groups up and running. Because when the DAO has proper funding, I mean, this could be like a day job for people. So it makes sense also to get involved at the ground. You'll be part of hopefully a very big organization like the RenDAO. Hopefully, could be a very big one. Working on interesting stuff with interesting people, solving multi-chain for the world. So, yeah, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, I'm really excited by the RFC, Max. I think if it can be proven that Ren can decentralize relatively quickly and relatively safely, then without the grey core, then I think that's quite something. I'm looking forward to reading more about that. And it sounds to me like next week is probably going to be a busy week for us all. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the developments unfold. And thanks to everybody else as well that's contributed to the DAO. And I know that we're still a pretty small DAO to begin with, but thanks to everyone that's worked on it so far. It's always nice to know that the team appreciates us as well, Max. So thank you for the sentiments.
Just one quick question on the subnet model. I guess for somebody who's not overly technical, what would be the great disadvantage about doing the subnet model as opposed to just not doing it? Just to really simplify it.
The disadvantage of doing it instead of not doing it?
Yeah, so I mean, is there any disadvantage towards actually doing the subnet model? Like, what's the trade-off? Because from what I read and what I understand, it looks like it's all positive. So,
I mean, it's just, of course, it takes resources to develop. That's, I mean, partly being done through the catalog release anyway. I guess it's only if it's like a waste of time, but we don't think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
In terms maybe of like, scaling or stuff like that. So the whole point of subnets is that it won't overload like the core MPC layer. That would still be, regardless of how many transactions there are like on a subnet, it wouldn't overload that thing. So technically, there's like I don't believe there's like a downside to it because we're just adding something to the stack of Ren. But in terms of strategy, it's like, resources, time, focus, discussion. The community has to consider it, governance, etc. It could be more work in the future to manage all the subnet stuff. I mean, it will be more tasks for governance later when it's like governing subnets and how that works. So it's inviting more work.
Yeah, and I guess with it, you wanted the hope, the dream would be really hitting critical mass. And you have your likes of your big protocols like Compound or Aave or anyone else who wanted to run their own subnet essentially and connect into all the different chains via it. Is that the sort of what you are looking at or would hope to happen?
I mean, we don't know how many subnets, for instance, there would be in parallel. Maybe people want to be on maybe there will be just a few subnets, so applications can talk to each other within a subnet more easier. Or maybe some applications prefer their own programming environment with their special needs. It could be like a centralized subnet or a permissioned subnet. It could be all sorts of things. I mean, it's hard to say and predict exactly where the market will go in the future. So that's also why we're trying to have like a generic support for everything. And then we'll just try to catch as much as we can and see. And then when we know like where the value is, we'll focus on that. Right now, everything, there's so many narratives and stuff changing in DeFi. Things are going, NFTs, etc., going up and down, and V tokens, like all of those experiments going on in DeFi. it would. We just know that lending makes sense. Of course, that has to be supported. Trading, like DEX trading and lending, those are the things that are working at the moment. Everything else is sort of chaotic.
Certainly is.
So we just want to support generic applications and be able to support stuff that isn't being done yet in DeFi. So hard
Okay,
to
yeah.
say how it will look, but hopefully a lot of activity on Ren.
But I guess the selling point to whoever wants to come and build is to get the Ren tech stack, like you're saying, and obviously as opposed to going and building, say, on a parachain or an avalanche subnet, sorry, they would obviously get access to the SMP PC.
Yeah, because when people want to roll their own interoperability technology, we see them fail repeatedly, getting hacked. Ronin network, they built their own bridge to Ethereum, and they lost 600 million USD.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too difficult for a layer one project to also suddenly just invent like front, tip of the spear interrupt technology like Ren. That's where we have the advantage. And now when we have that sort of already deployed and completed to some sense, now we can sort of add support for applications, and then because that's easier now that we know that they've already showed us how to do it.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Max.
Hey, are we done then? So Bobby, Arby, what do you think?
Sure sounds like it. Sure sounds like it. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Max, for taking those questions and everything. It makes it easier as well to kind of grasp yourself and come with more constructive questions and all that. So I'll try to post something in the RFC regarding specifically on the subnets as well.
Yeah, I also had some thoughts about run buyback. Probably buyback is the wrong word. Run buying Ran, but I'll probably share it in the RFC as well if it comes to that. I'm not a fan of it. Spoiler. Another thing, Sabobi, you asked about the digest. One small little thing that I thought would be cool when you are mentioning community members, it would be cool to link their Twitter, for example. It creates a tighter network of community members.
It's a good idea.
Yep.
Will do. Thanks. One very quick question, Max. What's the biggest pros and cons you see with having just like Ren as a layer one than the subnet model? Just like 1-2 points. Like, what was the biggest factor?
The biggest is security, and the other is support for less applications. If we let's say turn Ren core layer into an EVM chain as well, we can only support EVM applications, of course, even if Solidity and all that is very this has the most adoption. We don't know what the most adoption will be in the future, and transitioning like from an EVM chain to something else in the future would be very difficult, because Ren would have a lot of TVL, so it's not safe to change stuff, like doing drastic changes as the network is live and doing stuff, and security, as I mentioned, by adding a bunch of application features in the MPC and the consensus layer for the dark nodes. It makes so many changes that we would be afraid that something could, like a bug, could start exploiting, releasing funds from Ren through, some kind of trick. Even if so the NPC thing would be working, but there's some kind of exploit that's introduced that lets an application to just start draining funds from Ren, and that's the biggest fear, because then Ren would die. It's an existential threat if we added application functionality into sort of the dark node, basically. So that's why we don't like that idea. Instead, having the subnet model lets us compartmentalize that, so the core layer is safe, and the core layer would know sort of how much TVL is in each subnet. And so a subnet couldn't drain all of Ren. It could only access the funds that are custodied in that subnet. So it's a much safer model. It's easier to develop as well, doing it this way, than starting tinkering with how MPC and consensus will work. And it would require you, each network, as you know, when we talk about scalability, you have stuff like you need more memory to store the blockchain, then you have to deal with that in the dark nodes. You need to beef up the nodes to handle more requests, and all of that would put an enormous stress on dark node operators as well. And combine that with, like, if your node is not keeping up, you might lose out rewards and get slashed and all that. So there's so many downsides to putting the application layer inside a core layer that we seriously don't want to do that. Security and scalability and all that, and yeah.
And as a follow-up question, the subnets, could they all have their own unique models, or would they need to? What would be the limitations, or say?
The limitations would be just like how general we can make the plugins. In theory, it could be any kind of programming environment, at least how we see it today. As long as that programming framework could support the way we build out the plugins, it could be in Rust like Solana, or it could support different programming languages and different ways nodes are set up, different consensus networks. It could be a subnet could have a bunch of different, it could look differently, depending on what the developer subnet deployer would want. They would just need to support call it plugins, just like a, kind of, I don't know how, so like Polkadot has palettes or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact term, but they just need to support like a few things, and then they can deploy, a parachain that can look okay. Yeah, Polkadot isn't the best example because they have a lot more limitations that subnets would do in Ren.
So basically, taking most of the ecosystems out there, let's say Cosmos, Polka, you got EVMs and all those. In theory, the subnets, if we go with the subnet model, the subnets could host projects from those ecosystems if they wanted to port over, and that would be relatively simple, right?
Yeah, we believe that we could have like an EVM subnet, you could have like a Cosmos Tendermint subnet, you could have like a Solana like subnet. You could have all of these different subnets that then utilize Ren in the core layer. So projects could copy over to a Ren subnet and get easier multi-chain access, cheaper and all that. Or they can use RenGS if they don't want to do it. We'll be prepared for either case. But who's going to build the subnets? That's, of course, requires resources. We're considering, if the community wants us to go with subnets, then we probably need some additional developers to do the VM subnet. Because you also want to maintain and update and improve the subnet the tooling. Each time. So in a chain like Ethereum, so the people that develop Geth, that Go Ethereum client, you're constantly making improvements to networking and storage and all that. So you would need a dedicated team to keep improving stuff like that. The current Ren team would probably not focus on the EVM subnet, but we'll be focusing on the core Ren layer, so MPC and how darkness work, and maybe we'll add some governance features into the core stuff, and sharding. We want to have that out soon as well. So that's this kind of stuff the Ren team would focus on. Well, probably would want another team or something like that to work on the EVM side, and then if there's a Cosmos chain, like another team that works on the Cosmos subnet, etc. If we get to that point, we'll have a huge ecosystem generating a lot of revenue for dark nodes, which I am excited about. I run a lot of dark nodes. I also want to be part of that, of course. The subnet model is attractive because it can support all of these different ecosystems that are being built out, and it can borrow tooling from those. So it can borrow tooling, it can borrow, Go Ethereum and all the work they're doing. It can borrow all the work people in the Cosmos ecosystem is doing to make a Cosmos subnet on Ren. We can borrow IBC when they have that. When there's a Cosmos subnet, they could use IBC as well, but sort of benefit Ren in some way, so we have easy access. A lot of opportunities open up when we're at that stage. So we would like to get to that stage, but of course, it requires resources and time.
Cool. Thanks, Max.
We should probably wrap it up. What do you think, guys? It's been 1 hour and 30 minutes now.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
Just want to mention that
Thanks, Trips.
that it's today is a record attendance for a community call. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. There were
Nice
29 folks. So yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Bye last. Wag me. Rent to 10.
All right. Harvey, glad you made it. Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everyone. Bye, fast.
Yeah.